God of War Ragnarök is the most recent installment to the God of War franchise, which is pretty much everyone is saying right now. It truly is an amazing and beautifully crafted game, both story-wise and gameplay-wise. They did a truly tremendous job of filling out the world they introduced to in the first game, and while seeing the dynamics of Odin and his family were interesting, I do think there were a few faults within this game. Before I start breaking down this mastercraft a little bit, I am going to refer to some spoilers, and I'm probably going to flip back and forth between using Atreus and Loki's name, so that'll be your spoiler warning. The game starts you out right off with the Leviathan Axe and the Chaos Blade, which is good, but I felt like you were learning a lot of the moves that you learned in the first game, and even though you can kind of modify them later, it didn't really diversify them too much in my opinion. The augments do force you to use certain moves multiple times, so it forces you to kind of change your gameplay a little bit. And you do get a spear later on, which is a brand new weapon, but I feel like you could have gotten it a tad bit sooner. The combat in the first game, though, was really fluid and really good, and this only just capitalizes it and adds more to it, so it's definitely an upgrade, but it just did feel a little samey, especially in the beginning before you start unlocking new paths. And while the execution moves do feel really satisfying to pull off, a lot of them did seem to be recycled from the first one. They did add way more, but some of them were just the same and recycled. Now, you do get to play as Loki for large sections of the game, and it is pretty cool at first, but then once the novelty wears off, I kind of just felt like I rather would just play as Kratos instead of Loki. The whole time I was also expecting him to get a second weapon at some point, and you do get a sword, but then it actually just functions as more as an additional partner as opposed to a new weapon. Sure, you get a wolf mode eventually, and that kind of changes things, and you can get up and personal, but overall, I just didn't find myself enjoying gameplay as Loki too much. Speaking of partners, they really diversify that in this game. You do have Atreus and Freya mostly as your mains, and they both kind of function similarly. They both use bows of magic. However, Atreus summons his animals like before, but Freya uses magic and poison and Valkyrie skills, and honestly, I kind of found her to be a little bit better as a support. You do get other support characters, however they're much more limited. You get both of the dwarves who just kind of throw explosives and things. You get Thor's daughter, Thrud.
Thor's daughter. Relax.
And you even get Thor himself to join you a couple times when you're playing as Loki, which I was not expecting that at all.
Looks like we gotta head through that wall.
Something I need to do first.
Take your time.
Now we can go.
Wait for me.
My favorite of these support characters, though, was Ergoboda. The way she threw paint and colors around like it was a holy festival just really looked cool to me, and I just enjoyed it. Unfortunately, though, she was only with you for one section of the game, and I felt like that was the weakest section of the game.
Where are we going?
We're gonna get some food, plant some seeds, my everyday stuff.
While learning a lot of the interesting giant lore from her was cool, you just have to help her do chores around a swamp, and watching her and Atreus just be awkward at each other was not endearing to me at all.
Sorry.
I will say the grandma boss, though, was super unique, and I enjoyed that a lot.
In my humble home. Gotta get down to the floor.
For me, the standout boss, though, was definitely Heimdall, even more than Thor and Odin.
Hello. Great.
The way Heimdall was just this Joffrey from Game of Thrones to Atreus the whole time, I thought was really good, and you were just hoping to smash his smug little face in at some point, but then you get the message from the Fates.
You will learn that Heimdall intends to kill your son in Asgard, and you will do what you do best. And then Ragnarok.
The skies burn, the curtains fall. Exunt omnes.
And then you're just kind of left wondering, like, oh dang, is Kratos going to kill Heimdall or spare him? And then they went and gave him the broken power of precog, and you were just like, how are they going to defeat this man? I mean, Kratos had to make a weapon specifically to kill him. You can't say the same for Odin.
The spear remains our best chance.
You actually hit me. Slow down.
And the part that I enjoyed most was that Kratos was trying to spare Heimdall the whole time, but his smug little ego was just too much and he couldn't help but talk.
You are going to spare me out of pity.
Let it go, you may live.
You do not get to decide my fate. You are dead, sunshine.
Kratos, that was just... I don't know if we are breaking fate, or fate's breaking us.
I also thought the scenes where you went to the lake with Brock in order to make the spear were probably some of the best parts in the game as well.
What? No, I can't bless shit.
It is the nature of a thing that matters, not its form.
May this weapon strike true. May it be wielded with wisdom. May it be put down when its job is done.
Let us return home.
Thor as a character was also really well done too. He starts out as this brooding hammer for Odin that just smashes everything, but then when you start working with him as Loki and you start learning the dynamics of the Norse house, you realize that he's just another tool that Odin uses and manipulates. You even start to feel sorry for him as you start seeing his life slowly unraveling in front of him. And then he's being forced to work with the guy who killed his kids. I mean, he was definitely in a tough spot. Can't blame him for trying to go back to drinking again.
Right where I thought you'd be.
What are you doing here? You shouldn't be here.
Kratos and Thor are both brother in arms when it comes to being forced to be destroyers, but I did kind of think it was funny how they were like, hey, our kids are friends, so we better be friends.
Your daughter. My son calls her friend. For the sake of our children, we must be better.
However, it did feel kind of flat because right as soon as Thor kind of joins your team, Odin just immediately kills him.
No.
I didn't want this. I did not want this.
Speaking of Odin, while the way they portrayed him was pretty unique, I really just didn't dig the whole Allfather or the Godfather thing. I mean, he was just kind of a manipulator mobster, and that just doesn't really do it for me. I want Odin to be big, powerful, and intimidating, not a feeble, manipulating old man.
Back before winter set in, there were some misunderstandings.
Funny enough, the other character I didn't like was the cowardly Tyr. When you find out Odin was Tyr the whole time, I kind of just chuckled.
Does he ever suggest plans or just crap on everyone else?
I guess me and Brock had the same feelings about Tyr.
Brock, that belongs to the kid. He earned it. All you done was make passable dirt soup.
I also wasn't digging Sindri for a while, however his final rampage at the end, that was pretty sweet.
You don't get to use us anymore.
And given how things went with him in the final cutscenes, I can definitely see him being some type of antagonist in the future.
More or less what you wanted.
While this game did have a lot of misdirection and fun in the story, I do feel like they just kind of copy and pasted some of the story beats from the first game. For example, Thor plays almost the exact same role as Baldur in the beginning. He's just there to knock on your door and get you hype. But ultimately, the battle with Thor wasn't really as impressive to me as the battles with Baldur were, because they continued over the entire story where Thor kind of just joined your team, and I don't know, I just didn't feel that involved or invested in the final battle with him. And I feel like the dragon was one of the most memorable fights in the first God of War, and I feel like they didn't really get that same level of hype. I feel like Garm the Wolf was supposed to be that, and while it was pretty cool, I don't know, I didn't feel like it lived up to the same level. Although, the way you kill the Valkyries with Atreus, that was pretty cool. And as for the final fight with Odin, it just didn't seem to live up to the same level of hype as the final fight with Baldur and Freyr did in the first one. I don't know, maybe I'm just remembering that game with rose-colored glasses a little bit, or maybe I was just so over-leveled I didn't really feel that invested or scared during the fight. There are lots of rumors of Kratos dying in both games, even more so in this one with the Fate saying it was going to happen. The other theory that I kept seeing pop off a lot was that Kratos was actually Tyr the whole time, which, while he wasn't, he did end up doing a lot of the things that the prophecy said Tyr would do himself. He unites all the realms with Gjallarhorn, he uses a spear just like all the statues portray of Tyr using, and even led all the armies in the final battle, which the prophecy said Tyr would do. Overall, though, this game was really good, and I thought the story was pretty good overall, despite my small little grievances with it. The beginning just gets you really hyped up when Thor and Odin show up and kind of give you an offer you can't refuse, and Kratos just simply says,
No.
I did feel like the middle was a little slow, but that could have just because I spent a lot of time doing some of the extra side quests and missions. There's even a whole optional Badlands region where you run around fighting dragons and doing all kinds of crazy stuff. And I mean, they could have just made that a whole DLC and I think people would have been happy. Same with the post-game content. The big question's everyone asking, will it be Game of the Year? Nope, I don't think so. And even though Kratos would absolutely destroy them, I would love to fight Godfrey or Radon as Kratos. That is some DLC I would do dirty things for.